All right, now, so here I am. Don't want to say here we are, because someone might feel like they're obligated to be included. Obligation is a debt. When I know that there's creditor positions, or the creditor position. Anyway, so it's Monday, 10:37, 08 seconds, year 2023, 4th month, April 17th date. And I had a meeting with the mill manager at Natron Wood Products here in Jasper, Oregon. And I let them know, the main topic for conversation was the lien position. Number one, priority. And then, of course, number two would be the gag order. And so, so I started explaining to them, the way I see things. And, which I think is a wonderful thing to have a conversation should always be, as far as I'm concerned. Not necessarily that it should, but it's just natural that a conversation flows both ways concerning any subject matter. And the subject matter concerning that arose was a non-disclosure contract, which I also referred to as an attempted gag order and an attempt to nullify the lien position that I hold from a higher level, which a lot of people in the lower ranks aren't at the comprehension to what's really going on with that lien position that I hold in advance. But and when I started presenting it to the mill manager, he told me, he says he doesn't have any idea what's, with the lien position that I hold, as far as, I called it just a priority lien, just something general, just to get a quick comprehension. And, but, I told him that it's a lien position. Well, I told him, first of all, I said the corporation as a whole is really just one big giant corporation. And then I proceeded to add more enlightenment to the big corporation. And also, it's I noticed something that was going on, through the ET control. Is that every time I would bring something up and then I would go into more enlightenment on it, I would get cut off. In other words, the extraterrestrial didn't want to hear what I had to say again. Because at the highest level, the extraterrestrial has heard me say this time and time again. But, I'm repeating it again because there is a fresh soul sitting before me, as well as being robot controlled. And so, and I'm not saying that I'm not robot controlled either and have a fresh soul too. I'm just saying that, seeing how there is a fresh soul sitting before me, which has the opportunity to hear a full examination to some evidence, that being, the evidence being the enlightenment to the lien position that I hold, which I told him is a priority lien position. But anyway, so, I was interrupted and, nonchalantly, it's just kind of one of those things that, it was spoken off the tongue as though it was second nature, like the speech had been given before, and kind of with a little bit of attitude of, you're crazy, or I'm crazy, because, being robot controlled, more so over a fresh soul sitting before me, having the capacity to be enlightened or examine evidence that I would be presenting at the table. And we were sitting at a table across from each other. And this table was it had a big tree in the middle of it that was sliced in half. This tree was sliced in half, and the tree was probably 2 foot, foot and a half, foot and a quarter across, as it was split right down the middle, and it was facing up, and the the middle part that where the cut was at from the saw, it was sanded down and smoothed out, and it was probably around 20 foot long. And I'm sitting in the middle, facing the fireplace, overlooking the whole rest of the main office, which used to be a church. And behind me is a little kind of like a sign or some type of paper outlay with Jesus all over it, and different Jesus regalia stuff printed on the paper. It's probably a 36 square piece of paper, and anyway, so there we are sitting at the table, and of course on the edges to the table is see-through, like it was like thick glass. It was an inch, and it was connected to the edge, to the tree edge on both sides. So I'd be sitting on the chair, and here's a plate glass. It's about probably 8 inches long across, connected to the foot and a half tree that's cut. The cut half tree that's propped upside down so that the flat side is part of the middle to the table. And then on the outside is glass. On both sides is glass. So we're sitting at this wonderful table. And the bark is still on the tree underneath the table, so that if I was to swing the chair in or bring the chair in as I was sitting down, if I brought the chair in just far enough, the knees would actually bump on the bark to the tree that's still on this tree that's been cut down, and which still has life in it, or there's some living stuff still in that tree. It's not dead yet just because it's cut down. And it really doesn't even die at all. It's the appearance of death if it was dried out. But anyway, so the knees would touch the bark on this tree, and I looked at the floor underneath the table, which was probably some hardwood, probably had a hardwood floor. I would have to go back and examine it again. But there were pieces, small debris from the tree, from rubbing the knees on the tree, which is part to the table, and the debris would fall onto the ground. So underneath the table was wood debris from the bark of the tree underneath the table. And, of course I'm thinking, wow, that's kind of a wonderful thing. But it's really not, because here I am sitting here with this nice tree which could still be planted in the ground, providing oxygen into the air. Instead, it was murdered, corporately murdered. It was sacrificed for what the extraterrestrial has put in place in the society, what I call stolen value and fake money system, and a slave job system. So it's really not a celebration at all. although at first glance, if I was not privy to examine all the evidence that I've seen so far concerning this existence, I would think that that's a wonderful thing, how that table was constructed with that tree cut in half and the glass outlaid on both sides of the tree to bring forth this nice, flat, good-sized table. I would think that's a wonderful thing. And I would compliment all the craftsmen. There would be celebrations. We'd be high-fiving. And we'd be lifting our bank accounts together, thinking this prison plant, slave job, king rule, legal, stuck in the mud system is wonderful. But there's some evidence that I've examined, which is the reason why I was there to present at the table. And so, anyway, so I was cut off numerous times. Every time I was starting to bring forth evidence, the extraterrestrial knew that he needed to robot control the mill manager there, which is a soul also, and a fresh soul too, because, the way I see it, he's more robot than he is soul. But yet, when I finally got around to explaining some stuff, I noticed that his head was tipping down as though there was a lot of shame going on, even within the soul. And I let him know, and I said, it's pretty much quite evident to everyone around that we live in this existence is based on slave driving. It's slave driving, and it's not popularly talked upon. There's a lot of fear to expose it for what it really is. Although Hollywood movies will come out with it, and everybody will watch the Hollywood movie, but they'll never really say a thing in public. Never even mention anything, especially before the rulers, which would be the king and the club members. And I noticed his head was hanging. I could see something was starting to break through. And I let him know. I said, it's a wonderful thing for me to bring this up. This stuff needs to be heard as far as I'm concerned. And as far as I'm concerned, it needs to be heard over and over and over and over and over and over until it's seen very clearly in its second-hand nature to speak on these things without fear in the king's presence. And that would be the extraterrestrial bully. And then underneath the command chain of that is the Vatican, all those that sit in the Vatican, from the Jesuit general all the way down underneath him is the Pope, and the military and all that stuff. Then there's the government, and this is the command chain. Or in legal terms, it's called the chain of command. But of means without the people in actuality. It's just, the ruling class step all over everyone and have a bunch of slaves, that don't particularly know how to join the club or even want to join the club. So they're stepped on. But anyway, so there's ET, Vatican, then there's military, and then there's government. The chain of command. Then there's CEOs that run the corporations, and then all the employees. An assistant CEO would be just considered an employee, but the CEO usually runs it. Now, usually though, the CEO is just a front man, and the system is set up to hide in a way, but who's really running it is the board. Like here in the county, this county that I live in here, that exists in here, it's called Lane County in Oregon, Lane County, Oregon. It's really the board that's running everything, okay? It's the board, and then in that board, there's called the chairperson, the chairman to the board, or chair girl, chairwoman, and that's the one that's usually in charge that, kind of has the final say. Supposedly. But really it doesn't, what I see going on, it doesn't really matter what positions are held, because knowing what I know how the bully functioned, the bully could just be some regular old guy in the county living in a house somewhere having some regular job as his camouflage, but yet he's running everything in the county. And everybody thinks that the board members are running it, or the CEO, and it's not. Could be someone, and this gets me all into the evidence and subject matter called shapeshifters. These are extraterrestrials that don hologram human bodies. And the extraterrestrial is so talented. The child little bully, he ain't no just run-of-the-mill drum rum. This is a talented little fucker. Very talented, very smart, highly sophisticated. It's just that, he hasn't quite yet grown up in sophistication to share everything and to accept every other living organism for value. and see that equality across the board, across the whole gamut, that equality is really something special that I think, in the opinion that I have, that all living organisms wish they had equal share to all the resources that are out here. All of them. I really don't think that anyone really likes being a slave. That's really what it gets down to. But I don't like to speak for anyone. I just like to speak for the self. And really, when it comes down to it, I don't like being a slave. I don't. I really don't. And that's kind of the point why I'm sitting there at this table across from this mill manager, bringing some evidence as to why. And of course, at the same time, how I see the system runs, and more than likely he sees it too, but he can't, he's in a position where he can't really say anything against it. Otherwise, if he was to rebut against the system, he would probably lose his job. And that's really the only reason why most slaves, or most people that have been turned into slaves, usually don't say much. It's because it's basically tantamount to a death sentence, or torture, or suffering, not having a wonderful house to live in, not enjoying food, being cold and being hot, and all these things. This is the mind fuck. This is at the root. This is a mind fuck that fucks with all kinds of living organisms that I see going on. But I really can't speak for him. But I share what I observe. I think that's quite reasonable to share what I observe going on with many other living organisms. Being a living organism also. But I always like to say, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. So here I am at 18 minutes into this video, and of course, the 2 points that I brought up, and I brought up, basically I told him, this is the extraterrestrial's attempt to see if he could trick me out of the lien position that I have, and to place a gag order on me. And as soon as I brought up the gag order stuff, of course, the extraterrestrial controlled the mill manager sitting across the table from me to go into that regular, what I call, what's it called? Just the spiel, the regular corporate spiel that usually comes out, which is, well, this doesn't have anything to do with no gag order. This is just regular company policy that, you won't speak bad about me, I won't speak bad about you. And of course, the priority technology that we have, that you won't say nothing about the technology that we have, But at the larger level, I know that technology is technology. And not only has that technology been stolen, that technology at the highest level is a very guarded secret across the board with the ET, the military, because everybody's familiar with all kinds of non-disclosure contracts going on in the military and all kinds of technology that's been hidden from the slaves in the military. To me, it's a no-brainer. But of course, I'm there to kind of help the soul to see what's going on and give encouragement, to kind of speak up with probably what he already knows. Probably what he already knows and probably doesn't live very conscious with it until all of a sudden one day he was conscious that I'm there in the same work environment with him. Especially when I brought up the ET subject. I was the one that brought it up. And the only reason I brought it up is because he asked me a question. And the question was, what do you think's going on with this hack thing that you keep putting in the reports? Because, I have to give a report at the end of the night of what I think's going on during the day with the numbers. And so when the numbers are finagled and I see it happening, I always put in the report that the computer has been hacked. So he asked me one day, he says, what's this hacked thing? And basically what he's saying to me is, what's this hacked stuff you're putting in the report that I'm starting to see consistently all the time now? And that's when I said, well, let me give an honest answer, exactly what I think's going on. But I also put it in a what if and could be scenario. And so I says, yeah, the extraterrestrial probably hacked it. Extraterrestrial. When I say extraterrestrial, that includes everyone in the club underneath him, which would be the militaries, governments, CEOs, and employees. Or, the Vatican, military, government, CEOs, and employees. At some level, that computer was hacked, and it was probably hacked on purpose. But I never did get to the reason why, but I discussed that with the daytime supervisor because he was right there beside us as the conversation ejaculated or erupted or spontaneously came forth all of a sudden. So, these are all different words for saying the same thing, although society labels certain words as being shunned and no, you can't say it, which to me is a bunch of kind of bullshit. But anyway, getting back to the event and the subject at hand. So we're talking on, extraterrestrials. The extraterrestrial that controls what's going on. A child bully. Not only a child bully, but stuck in the mud with abuse. Running this universal system. And it isn't just this planet. I think there are all kinds of other planets that this child universe has been controlling for a long time. And to the point where it's probably been every single planet. And I think that this could be the first planet that's starting to all of a sudden have a full conscious spoken audit exposing rebuttal to the little child, which really at heart just needs a mother, needs motherly energy to grow up, which includes, symbolically tits, symbolically knowledge, comprehension, understanding, wisdom, all these, wonderful things on the street that everyone's easily comprehends what it really is. Wisdom at its heart is just, it's symbolically it's tit knowledge. It's tit milk. It's an infant's need to suck on something to get nutrients into the soul to grow. I mean, to me, it's very common, very sensible, very sensible. And so this is what I bring forth to share as a lawful sheriff. So anyway, I say all that because, the extraterrestrial subject, it's nothing new between me and the mill manager. That was nothing new for me to bring it up at this meeting concerning this non-disclosure contract and the two main points that I was bringing forth, or evidence on behalf, the two main points. Those 2 points being the lien position and the gag order. Disguised as a non-disclosure, you won't share our company technology. Which to me, it's stolen technology and it's connected to all technology. Technology. Point blank, what the extraterrestrial was trying to do to have a trial there. The extraterrestrial was trying to get me to shut up and have a signature to get to the guilty conscience within me that I ain't going to speak forth in this free speech leaned zone that I hold in advance right here. That's what it really gets down to. And that's what I wanted to, somewhat give some clues, because I wasn't able to present all the evidence at this quote-unquote trial. Because that was a trial right there. But in all actuality, at the same time, I was the one holding court. It was the ET that was holding a trial, because that's what he likes to call it. I call it an affidavit audit exposure court, a lawful court. I was holding lawful court there. And then the extraterrestrial was always looking for a way to weasel out of listening to what I had to share in the court. Always looking for a way to weasel out, or to have the ears plugged, or some excuse to not to hear everything that I have to say, to cut me off, all kinds of things, whatever it could be. Anything the ET little child can think of, because children are very manipulative. That's just especially bully children, and especially stuck in the mud abusive bully children. They want their way and their way only, which is full control of everything. Full control. I like to replace of with love. But anyway, so, I could see that this fresh soul sitting before me, of whom I was bringing some enlightenment as a very high level illuminated Mason. I am a very high level illuminated Mason. High level. But, it's just a story, and the reason I say that is because there are things that I know and things that I see that the average living organism has not known or seen yet, as far as I'm concerned. But I always like to say, it's really not apropos to believe anything I say, because it's still just a story. And the only reason I know these things and I share them with authority and confidence and security is because I have self-experience with these things. Self-experience. Self-experience. And it's natural for me to share directly from self-experience. To me, that's the proof in the pudding that I need to know. That's all I need to know. I don't need to know anything else. As far as I'm concerned, all the self-experience that I have brings me the security that I need to know. Yeah, the security, the confidence, the joy. Security is also just another word for joy. Confidence, just another word for joy as far as I'm concerned. Happiness, to be at rest, to be relaxed, with no guiltiness, no guilty feelings. That would be tax, no attacks, no more war. That's what I call peace. That's what I call living forever, which has been disguised with a modern religious story that one has to die and live such a suffering life. And then after one dies, if one believed someone else's story now, it's always someone else's story, then they'll be saved and they'll get to live forever in that wonderful peace. So to me, that's a diversion story from what's really going on in the universe that I see. And it's a form of manipulation and control, once again. everything comes down to the ET child, mud-stuck bully, is wanting to control everything with tricks and manipulation. And manipulation is just another word for telling all kinds of stories in hopes that he's going to get as many as he can to believe it, and enough to believe it so that the popular vote rules the whole atmosphere. And so, and I call that the boy energy, the legal boy energy, or the king energy, the legal king energy. And that atmosphere pervades until the girl energy steps up and speaks up and says, now hold on now, I have some things to share here, what I see going on, king or boy. and with the information that the girl energy shares, I see that information being shared from not just a girl level, but a matured girl level that has had a child, a mature girl level. And so I call that the motherly level. This is everything I see going on in the universe so far is just a mother dealing with a child that she gave birth to. Yeah. It is very sensible to me. Very sensible. Anyway, so, but I could see that the mill manager was growing weary. He was growing weary because there wasn't a real soul thirst in him as he sat across the table. The soul really wasn't that thirsty to hear the evidence. The soul really wasn't that thirsty to hear what I had to say. The king wasn't that interested in hearing the queen speak. That's really what it got down to. A different way of saying the same thing. But, that's wonderful. That's wonderful because at least mother had some tit time with the child. Just one meal. One meal is better than no meal. Because, and at the end of the conversation, I reached over and I said, everything's wonderful. It seems like we're at peace and all that. And, there was no hard feelings, because I'm not here to burn bridges. I'm here to labor with. But, but at the same time, I always say, I could be crazy, I could be mental, I could be off the rocker, because I like to leave that benefit of the doubt out there, because that gives the child some sense, that the story that he shares has some meaning to him. Otherwise, everything that he's known, if it all came crashing down, I think the child would probably just kind of wither and die. And so, I always like to use the example, like a dad playing with a son in the yard. Say they're playing football in the yard, to celebrate the popular sport going on. Usually most dads, if they're very loving, they'll always let the son seem like he's winning in the football game. Or if they're wrestling, the dad will just play it out like, oh, you got me, son, you got me. And that helps the son boost his confidence that, with the story that he's been trained, he got birthed into a societal expectation story, and that is to be the greatest and to go around and win all the time, and someone has to lose. So a child is born with that conscience. And so a father who doesn't quite know what's going on and also has that kind of conscience too, but has more so of a loving side to him from just living, some love comes into him. Not all fathers are that loving, but there's a lot of them. There are enough in society that I can use this example that is a real life scenario that's very relatable to. It's very relatable to, a child likes to feel like his story is believed. That's really all a child wants. The child wants to feel secure. and that security is very necessary, I see. It's very necessary. Otherwise, there would be no hope to even want to continue and live. So, as I see the stuck-in-the-mud bully king, which rules the atmosphere, or been ruling the atmosphere with, abrupt abuse, stuck-in-the-mud abuse, that's all he really knows. That's his story. And he wants to feel somewhat secure. So for me, to force that mill manager across the table to get as much milk into his system from the tit that I had to offer, or the tit being symbolic as knowledge, wisdom, understanding, comprehension, evidence, for me to force that child into more than that child could handle, that would, to me, would be a very unloving and unmotherly thing. I had to let that child go away thinking that his story was great. And not only great, according to the Trump movement, it's great again. Because it looked like it was starting to waver, especially when the private maritime law information, which is the affidavit information, which is the girl information that I share, which has been springing forth even before I was born into this legal world, even before I was born into this legal world. That private maritime information has always been there. And as far as history as I could see it coming out, it happened during King Henry VIII's reign, is when that affidavit finally came out. Although his father, King Henry VII, wrote it up. And his fathers started thinking on it and planning it out, because they could see what's going on, and they did not, this is the way I see it, they did not like the position they saw themselves in, as being a slave master and have to go around and step on everyone. That's the same thing as being Bubba in the prison. At heart, they don't really like having to go around and step on everyone in the prison. And especially the most hated ones are the pedophiles. At heart, they really don't like that. But they feel locked in that there's no way out but to act that way. Or else their livelihood is at jeopardy if they don't.